welcome back to another episode of our This Travel Tribe podcast. So this week, we are going to be focusing on a spectacular looking place in the United States. I haven't been able to go yet, so I'm really excited to learn more about it. But that is visiting Glacier National Park and then also adding on a visit to Missoula, Montana. So we're going to talk about both of the destinations, how to get there, the logistics, all the things you're going to want to know if you are hoping to plan a similar trip. So today we have our guest, Janice Moskoff, here with us, and she is going to be sharing all sorts of knowledge about visiting Glacier in Missoula. So Janice, thank you for being here. Do you want to just take a minute and introduce yourself?
Lisa, if you can hear me.
Looks like you froze.
I froze. Yes, which is
you froze. Okay.
Okay, which we should be fine. Okay.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes. So do you want to just take a minute and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, first of all, Lisa, for inviting me to be on the podcast. I love talking about travel, especially places as beautiful as Montana. I really appreciate it. I am a travel blogger and a writer on Gather and Go Travel. I do some freelance stuff, but mainly write on my blog. I write about U.S. and international locations. I've been to 50 countries and all over the U.S., and I've been traveling for as long as I had money to be able to pay for it myself. We didn't do a lot of it growing up. I had 3 sisters. So there was a lot of long car trips. So it's always been a priority for me. And my audience, I really focus on the kind of travel that I can do. I am married and I live in the Chicago suburbs, and we have 2 teens, a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old. I have a 13-year-old girl and a 16-year-old son. And we've been traveling since they're younger. So I write a lot about family travel, focusing on travel with teens, couple travel. I do some trips just with my husband. And then I do several trips with friends. So I really talk about trips that focus on that kind of group, that audience that is in the same place I am in, that maybe has some older kids and a little bit more flexibility to sometimes travel without them. And with that, I focus on a lot of hiking. I love to be in the outdoors. I love to hike. Beautiful destinations. And also, I use travel as an opportunity to learn about the world. So a lot of what I write about is also learning related as well.
I love all of that. The hiking, the family, the couple travel. That's where I am too. So
wonderful.
Such a fun spot to be in life. Okay, so Glacier. This has been on my bucket list for so long. And so I'm excited to hear all the details so that, I don't have to do all the planning now because you're going to tell me what I need to do and what I need to know. So this is going to be great. So first of all, if someone is planning a trip to Glacier, do you want to just tell them where it is, first of all, and then the best way to get there?
Sure. And I have the same, I can relate to your sentiment. I have been wanting to go to Glacier National Park for years. I tried to plan this trip 3 times. And as I get into talking about Glacier, there's several challenges about planning a trip to Glacier because it's such a high demand destination with a very limited visitation schedule because of the high alpine environment and the short season and the limited lodging and amenities from the park. So you really have to plan this trip far in advance. But to your question, so I can relate, and 3rd time's a charm. I planned this as my 3rd attempt to plan at Glacier, and we started planning this trip about 6 months out. A lot of people recommend traveling and planning earlier. 13 months is ideal, and I can get into that detail if someone's really trying to plan the ultimate epic Glacier trip and stay in all the places I couldn't because the lodging was full. They want to plan further out. But in order to get to Glacier, to your question, you can do it 3 different ways. You can drive because, a lot of people, we live in the Chicago suburbs. I know several families that have done the long 2-day drive to get to Glacier National Park, which isn't too bad. If you have the time period, you can drive there. And another benefit is you have your own car. Rental cars in the Glacier National Park area can run really expensive. They can run $100, $200 a day. So it's a great way to save money and just do the long drive and get there. We had a limited vacation time. We actually went to Glacier last summer for about a week. I would have wanted to go longer, but we had bookended kid activities and my husband's job, and we just couldn't carve out more time. So we had a shorter amount of time. So we flew into Glacier, and there's really three main airports that you can fly into Glacier. There's a Glacier International Airport, which is probably the most obvious. That's in the town of Kalispell, which is about a 45-minute drive sort of southwest of one of the main of the six Glacier National Park entrances from West Glacier. And that area has the most amenities and the most lodging. So it's a very popular area of the park. So there's no surprise. That airport is the closest. You can rent your car from there. That's where we flew into. A second airport that you can fly into is actually where we flew out of, and that's the Missoula, Montana airport. That's about 2 hours and 45 minutes south of that West Glacier, that southernmost entrance point of Glacier National Park. And you can fly in and out of that and rent a car, and you might have more services options and some cheaper flights. Another option, if you do not mind driving a little bit, is that you can fly in and out of the Spokane, Washington airport, which is about 4 hours and 45 minutes away. And I'm going to add one fourth option for your listeners.
So many options.
Right. One fourth option. If they have passports and they do not mind flying into Calgary, Calgary is about a 3-hour drive from not the West Glacier entrance. That's sort of like, if you look at Glacier National Park, and it's your question I forgot to answer, was Glacier National Park is in the northwest corner of the U.S. state of Montana. And it is, I can't emphasize this enough, it is a huge national park. It's over 1 million square acres. And if I can remember that right, it's actually bigger. It's not a big state, but it's bigger than the U.S. state of Rhode Island.
Wow.
So it is a huge park. So to get from one end to the other is often a 2 or 3 hour drive. And so there's 6 main entrances. So if you want to get to Glacier, your fourth option, if you don't mind flying in and out of Canada, you can fly to Calgary, pair it with some other exciting national parks in the area, and you can drive about 3 hours south to get to I think it's the Many Glacier or the St. Mary entrance, sort of on the east and the northeast side of the park. So there's a lot of options, and I bring it all up because a lot of people just look at that first airport at Glacier International Airport and they cry a few tears because it is so expensive. And, you don't book it far enough advance and there's just not enough flights. So there are some other options. And I forgot, the third way to get to Glacier, you can drive, you can fly. And one thing that I have personally wanted to do forever is take the Amtrak overnight train, the Empire Builder, which actually originates in Chicago and is a 2-day trip. That's an overnight trip, and you can take it straight to Glacier National Park. The train line continues on to, I think it's Portland, Washington, maybe Seattle and Portland. So you can take it all the way across the country, but it would be sort of that epic American adventure. You can take the train into either the East Glacier or the West Glacier entrance and get to the park that way. So there are your 3 options.
Okay.
I hope I answered.
The train would be so fun because that would be something unique. If you were taking kids especially, I think they would love that.
Yes. I know a couple of families who've done it. I mean, they rave about it. So it's a great option.
Okay, so this is a big park, and I'm going to guess that if you have a week, you can't really see everything, but maybe I'm sure you can see a lot. So what are some of the highlights or things that you think people definitely should not miss if they are heading to Glacier?
So if you have a week, you are a very lucky person. I think you can really fit in quite a lot. We only could carve out 3.5 days. I mean, it's 4 when you talk about when we land and then when we leave, but we had 3.5 days, and people can also do it in 1 day. I think I recommend just seeing Glacier, fitting in whatever you can. One of the most iconic things, so there's like 4 or 5 buckets of activities that you can do when you visit Glacier. I'll talk about my favorite first, which is hiking. There are, if I remember it right, over 700 miles of hiking trails throughout Glacier. There's several day hikes. There's a lot of backcountry overnight camping hikes, which I personally don't do anymore. I just don't have the gear, and I'm not super confident in my backcountry knowledge. So I would probably do a guided trip if I did it that way, but you could do hikes that way. One of the things that's a little under the radar and a hidden gem for Glacier that you don't really find out unless you dig a little deeper is that there's this option to take a combination of a boat ride and a hike where you pre-book boat tickets and you skip like half of the hike and get to the trailhead at the boat dock, and then you hike and you're a little bit closer to the actual destination. So we did 2 hikes like that. There's sightseeing and driving. One of the most iconic, beautiful roads in America is the Going to the Sun Road, which carves itself right through the middle of Glacier from the west to the east side. And it's a 50-mile sort of improbable road that curves around this alpine topography with these stunning views and turnoffs. And it reaches its apex at Logan Pass, which we could never actually find parking, which if you drive Glacier, parking, especially in the height of the season, is a pain. And I can mention it later, but I have a blog article with probably about 17 tips of things, and parking is one thing that I talk about as well, because it can be real tough to find parking. But you can get to Logan Pass and you see this 360-degree views, and it's just breathtaking. And you can do a hike from there as well. So there's sightseeing. You can drive the road back and forth. We were on the Going to the Road, Sun Road several times. So there's hiking. There's several lakes within the park. I can't remember how many, but you can do boating. You can rent kayaks and canoes. You can do stand-up paddleboarding. There's fishing, all of that. And then also for people who want to do either more educational or guided activities, there's guided activities in the park, either through the national park system with the rangers. And, when you get to the park, you can see the activities, get a listing, stop at a visitor center, or you can look at them on the website beforehand, and you can join for talks or, just more education. And there's several private companies that are just outside Glacier, and some of them are even official park concessionaires, where you can book a day hike that's guided, or you can book a multi-day backcountry trip. Or there's a lot of people go rafting. Right on the border of the park is I can't remember the river, but there's the river. You can do a whitewater rafting trip as well. So and you horseback riding. So there's lots and lots to do. Or you can just sit on the edge of one of the beautiful lakes and stare at the beautiful scenery around you and just relax.
That all sounds so fantastic. Now, I wanted to start with that and focus on the really amazing things about Glacier, because I think one reason I haven't been is I've heard that it's just hard to get in. Like, you have to get permits, you have to plan ahead, and so it just hasn't quite worked out for me. So I know that you have some details for us just on things to think about ahead of time as you're planning. Like, what permits do you need? What other things do you really need to think about ahead of time to make this trip a success?
Sure. And I will back up, because the most important thing when it comes to Glacier is booking your lodging first. I touched on it earlier when we were talking, and the season in Glacier is very short, just because it's such a high altitude and there's snow. For example, that through road, the Going to the Sun Road, doesn't get cleared of snow fully and isn't open to vehicles until probably mid-June or even late June. And the date changes just based on the snowfall. There's no magic date every year. So the season is short. The competition for lodging is intense. And so the number one thing, if someone's planning a trip, and I think this is what trips up so many vacation and what trips up so many people, is that you need to book that lodging far in advance. If one of your listeners wants to stay in the park, they need to be on the booking site 13 months in advance of when they want to stay, because that's when the bookings open for in-park lodging. And there's several options to stay in. And what's really great is some of these lodging options, they run from motels to inns to rustic cabins. And there's one or two grand hotels. There's the Many Glacier is a grand sort of Swiss chalet, iconic place to stay that is at a higher price point, but several of them are very affordable options, and they will book up the morning that bookings open, the day of. So I think your first thing to do if you're thinking about a trip to Glacier is get on these 2 websites. There's 2 websites to know about. One is the official park lodging site, which is Glacier National Park Lodges. That's run by the company Xanterra. And if any of your listeners are regular national park visitors, they'll probably recognize that company because Xanterra runs several of the lodges and the accommodation in national parks. So you'd get on that site about 13 months and you book your lodging. And then that will cover almost all of the in-park options to stay. Then there's a separate company called Glacier Park Collection, and they have several park adjacent properties and one or two that are within the park. And then you can go ahead and reserve your properties. One thing that I learned, and I think will help your listeners, is that I didn't realize.
You just cut out for a second. So let's start just that you can book outside the park as well. You just cut out right there.
Okay. So you can book outside the park as well. And I don't know if I shared, so Glacier Park Collection is that who you want to talk to for, or whose website that you want to go to be able to look at some of those park adjacent properties. What I didn't realize when I was booking Glacier, and I've only recently learned, is that for these official park lodging options, when you book 13 months in advance, especially with the Xanterra company, that the cancellation policies are very, very generous. So if you don't know your schedule 13 months in advance, go ahead and book some dates because you can cancel without penalty, I believe, until a very close time to your vacation time. So you can kind of, and I think unfortunately or fortunately for people who are planning that far in advance, they book blocks of rooms. They maybe book several dates and pay the deposit until they know when their travel dates are. So I did not realize that you could do that. So number one, 13 months in advance. If you can't do that, which we never have been able to do, you can stay outside of the park, and your best bet is West Glacier. And we stayed at an inn. It was called the Great Bear Inn. It was a 10-minute drive outside of West Glacier. They still had availability 5 to 6 months before we went there. For someone who wants to go to Glacier, is not planning that far in advance, and you don't mind driving, you can stay in the towns of Whitefish or Kalispell, but that adds another 45-minute drive or 30 to 45-minute drive to Glacier. To your other question, in addition to getting your lodging, which I think is the most challenging thing, is that you need Glacier National Park has been attempting, they're such a highly visited park with so much traffic. They've been trying to control the traffic into the park for several seasons, and they're doing that through a vehicle pass registration system. And so for visitors, they need, and the system just changed from this summer to next summer. So they're really working through a pilot program to see what works best. So number one, if any of your listeners are planning a trip to Glacier, I would absolutely go to the Glacier National Park official website and check and look at vehicle registration information and see what the latest is. But I just looked over the latest information, and right now, if someone wants to be able to get access to one of the most popular entrances of the park, which is the West Glacier entrance or the Many Glacier entrance, they need to get it was $2 last summer, so it's not a lot of money, but you have to in advance get a 1-day pass to get admittance to those areas. And so what that means is that there's restricted admittance to these popular areas from the times during the height of the summer season, from July 1st to Labor Day. And during that restricted period for these two entrances, I think there's one other entrance. It might be the North Fork entrance that has a restricted area, that from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., no vehicles without this registration can enter the park. You have to wait. You either have to come before 6 a.m. or you have to wait until 3 p.m. And in order to get these passes, you have to get on the Glacier National Park website and through their concessionaire, the online website, I think it's called recreation.gov. 4 months before the date that you want your pass, you have to be online and buy a 1-day pass. So the money that, and I like the national park doesn't make these very expensive, but you really have to be on your game with timing and be on the website at the time that this opens. It might be 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. When a portion of these day passes open, and you have to get your pass then. If you miss that window, you have a second window the night before you want your pass. I believe it's now changed. It used to be in the morning, but it's now 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. that you can get your 1-day pass for the next day. which is a mouthful. That's a lot to figure out, and it gets complicated. I think it scares a lot of people off, but there's several ways around that. So if you want to visit Glacier and you don't have your passes for the entrances that you want to give you access to either the lakes or the going to the Sun Road, there's several ways around that. You can go through the park now. This was not an option last summer, through the St. Mary entrance. You drive very far, like almost 2 hours, get through the east side entrance and get access to the park there. Or you wake up really early and get to the park before 6 a.m., which a large number of people do. But the one benefit, I know you have more questions, but the one thing that is so wonderful about Glacier and being in Montana in July is that in the height of the summer, it stays light out till 10 p.m. So it's not necessarily a hardship to wait until 3 p.m. You still have 7 hours of daylight to enjoy the park, and you get to sleep in. So there's a lot of ways to be able to get around it. But if you're on your game, be booking lodging 13 months in advance and set a timer and a date 4 months in advance. 120 days, I think, is the exact timing to get your one-day passes. So it's a mouthful. I know that's a lot of information.
That's good information. So you need to be organized, and I would even put it right in your calendar, right, with a reminder to pop up so that you just don't miss it if you're really dedicated and committed to going on this amazing trip. Now, do you need permits also for specific hikes or going on certain drives once you're in the park, or is it once you're in, you're clear to explore any area of the park?
Yes, once you're in with your pass, your one-day pass, or you're in before or after that restricted window time, which is 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., for the height of the summer season, again, which is July 1st through, I think, Labor Day, you are free to explore the park. And you can go anywhere within that, what that entrance gives you access to. So the park is so huge, you can't actually, with your vehicle, access certain areas of the park from one entrance. You have to go to one of the other 6 entrances to get to especially day hiking areas. In addition, which I'm glad you asked your question, you don't need a special pass unless you're doing an overnight backcountry hiking trip where you need a permit for that to be able to camp in the backcountry. And so the rangers know where you are, and those are restricted, and there's a whole nother timing system and competition to be able to get those. Everybody else who enters the park, you need a vehicle pass. You need a vehicle or an individual park pass to give you a 7-day access to Glacier National Park. And that's just sort of your 7-day fee to be able to get in the park. And I think that's $35 per vehicle, maybe $20 per person. And that just is a pass. Everybody has to pay. You get 7-day access to Glacier. So you have to have that along with your vehicle registration to get access to the park, those restricted times. But you need both of them. Some people don't get the 7-day pass because they have an annual pass to national parks. Seniors get a lifetime discounted pass. I believe that's over 62. Families with 4th graders get a free pass for the year. I believe military veterans and persons with disabilities also get discounted or free passes as well. And that gives you access to Glacier and all the national parks. So I want to make sure I got that into. Yeah, so you have to have that pass.
And you can just buy that at the entrance, right? You don't need to plan and buy that ahead of time.
Great question.
That's pretty
you can
standard.
Buy that at the you can buy that at the entrance,
at the little
or
entrance booth.
Online.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. All right. There's so much information. I love it. Now, what about while you're driving around? What type of food options are available, or do you recommend that people kind of pack a lunch to have with them, or are there good options at the different lodges, or kind of what does that look like?
Sure. That's another great question and super important point visitors need to know. There's 2 things. I'm going to answer one question that you didn't necessarily ask, but it's related, is that all amenities are incredibly limited within the park. So before you enter the park, I would make sure that you're stocked up on your gas, have a full tank of gas, because there's only gas at the entrances. So if you're driving around for a while, you want to make sure you have a full tank. You also want to bring all the water that you need for the day, or the liquids or the drinks, and you want to have all the food that you need. So I recommend bringing all the snacks. I recommend bringing, especially if you plan to hike, that's just also standard safety, is make sure you have the food you need and any extra in case the weather turns or you take a wrong turn on the hike.
Yes.
Like you just have some extra provisions.
Mhm.
So we always bought picnics. There's a grocery store, a very small grocery store at the West Glacier entrance. And so we would just get picnic items and snacks and trail mix and that kind of stuff and always bring it with us. And there's just thousands of gorgeous places to just sit down and eat your lunch. I don't think you're going to find a better place. There are a couple places to eat within the park, but they're very restricted. And they're few and far between. And there's no guarantee, I had mentioned parking, that you're even going to get parking to be able to go there. So you might see it and then realize, oh my God, I can't park my car. It's not going to help you. So it's you can get some food at whenever you see a national park lodge or the inn, usually they have a cafe or a restaurant on site. That might mean having to find parking and having to go into either a sit-down restaurant or a cafe, but they are at very limited spots within the park, and it could take a lot longer to get there than you plan. So especially if you're traveling with a family, I know, one of my top 3 things that we make sure doesn't happen is our kids never get hungry because they get cranky real fast. So we always have food.
And mom and dad might get cranky without food too. So let's keep everybody fed. And I think it would take a lot of time out if you needed to go sit in a lodge and wait for a table and be served. That could take a couple hours at least when you could be out exploring the park. So I
100%.
think bringing food along is a really great idea. Then you can eat whenever you're hungry too.
Yeah. I mean, who wants to spend time indoors when you're at a park like that?
Yeah. Now you had mentioned things like kayaking and maybe stand-up paddleboarding, I think you said. Are those things that you need to reserve ahead of time, or is that more of a walk-up type activity?
I would reserve. So the official concessionaire for that is Glacier Park Boat Company. You could just Google them and be able to see what their latest requirements are. You can definitely reserve it in advance. However, there is the option for walk-ups, and you can reserve, sort of put your name on a waiting list to be able to get the craft. I personally, it's just, there's so many people, and I would reserve everything you can in advance and sort of plan your day around it. You have so much daylight. Sort of make it that anchor activity that you do. So 100%, I would book that in advance. But no fear, you can put your name on a waiting list if you didn't plan ahead and hope for the best. And plenty of people just aren't able to show up. Also, I'm going to jump back to the passes. I'm glad you brought this up because it reminded me of one thing that I just want your listeners to know is if they don't get their vehicle registration pass, which I talked about, where you have to buy that 4 months in advance or you have to get it the night before. One other way that gains you access is if you have a reservation for an official park tour or activity or rental. And so if you have a pre-booking, and all of those are prepaid with Glacier Park Boat Company, which is a tour, or one of the popular tours is the Red Jammer Tour, which is this iconic red sort of open air vehicle, old style vehicle that drives going to the Sun Road. It's a narrated tour. If you have a pre-booking for that, that also gains you access to restricted areas during those dates and times.
Okay, so there are a lot of workarounds if you can't get the permit. So it sounds like don't despair. Although I'm assuming that those activities also fill up pretty quickly. So you'd want to check the website and see how far ahead you can book and add that to your calendar as well.
Yes, 100%.
Yes. Okay, so do you have anything else that you think people need to know if they're heading to Glacier or wanting to plan a trip there?
I think I hit the big things. I think the goal is, I think the number one thing I would do, which I think scared me off of Glacier several times, is that it's such a big park that it's okay if you don't get lodging in the right area that you want. That we really stayed in West Glacier, and it's such a beautiful area to drive around that we used it as our anchor point and our base to explore all of Glacier National Park. It meant for some really long driving days, but it's beautiful, and that's part of the experience. So we hit all sorts of places. We even drove from where we were staying in West Glacier. If any of your listeners are familiar with this at this point, or have tried or have been to Glacier, is that we drove from there to the Many Glacier entrance to do a combination boat ride and hike. And our boat ride left at 8:30 in the morning, and we were up and out of the door of our inn at 5 a.m. And that was
Oh
with a
boy.
13-year-old. So we
So
did it,
not
and we can
easy.
do it. It's not easy, but
Yeah.
it's 100% worth it. So we just did some early days, and it worked out okay. So, if you can only stay in one place, I think the ideal, if you're planning in advance, is maybe stay in one or two areas of the park and use each as an opportunity to explore that region to eliminate some of your back and forth driving. But if you can't do that, it's okay. You can still have a wonderful experience.
Mm-hmm. And then how did you determine what activities or hikes you wanted to do? Like, did you read blogs and get other people's input, Facebook groups, use all trails? Like, how did you narrow it down on, to decide what was going to be best for your family?
That's another great question. So I'm a researcher. I definitely read some blogs. I was on All Trails. I'm an All Trails Plus subscriber. I don't know if you are too,
I am
Lisa,
too.
but
Yes.
yeah,
Love
it's
that.
100%. I can't recommend it enough, especially because for every time I go hiking for All Trails Plus, I'm able to offline download a map, which is a really great safety feature, because that means you don't have cell service. I think I didn't mention in the park, you're not going to have cell service. You want all your maps downloaded. You want backup batteries for your phone. So to be able to have a downloaded hiking map that will GPS locate you while you're hiking is a great safety feature. So I did research that way, but what the third thing I'm going to do, besides I read guidebooks, which I love guidebooks. I usually read one or two guidebooks for each location, blog articles, and All Trails to figure out what were my top hikes that I wanted to do. But the thing that sort of cemented what we want to do is pretty much every time our family visits a national park, we make a point of going to the visitor center and standing in line to talk to a ranger and to talk about our hiking plan. And our visiting plan. And we get the latest information about what are the closures, what are the best ways to get around. So when we got to Glacier that first day, our first visit was, after we got some food, was drive to the Apgar Visitor Center, stand in the line. It was outdoors, talk to a ranger and say, hey, this is the kind of hiker we are. These are the trails we're thinking about. What do you recommend? How do you recommend doing this? What time should we show up? What are the best ways to get there? Like, we wanted to do a trail at the top of Logan Pass, and we learned that the lower section of the trail had been closed due to bear activity.
Oh,
so those are good things to know. So you can hike the upper section, but that's good to know, is that half of that hike is closed. And then it's just also meeting what our abilities are. We're day hikers that usually hike anywhere from 2 to maybe 8 or 9 miles, just depending on the trail and the elevation gain. So, do some research on what does All Trail say is an easy or moderate hike, or is it, I don't know the highest level, is it strenuous, but
I don't know. I know hard. I did Grand Canyon and that was listed hard. So that, I don't know if it even gets worse than that. It probably does, but that was pretty rough.
Ultra hard. Yeah, that is, my legs hurt for 3 days after I hiked up the Grand Canyon.
Oh yeah, that's no joke. So I'm sure there's similar things in Glacier if you wanted to find them. But I'm going to guess there's plenty of great day hikes.
So many good
average hiker, or someone in average fitness could do.
Yeah, we ended up doing about 4 or 5 day hikes, and I had 2 others on my short list. And I include them in that article that I mentioned as well. So I list which ones that we did and their mileage and locations.
Okay, perfect. So we will link that blog post in the show notes for this episode. So if you're listening, just head over to this Travel Tribe and look for our Glacier episode, and the link over to Janice's post will be there. Okay, so now I know that you mentioned that you flew into Glacier, but then you flew out of Missoula. And so I thought that it would be fun to just chat about Missoula a little bit, since that is one of the options that you discussed at the beginning for a great place to fly into, because it's a little bit bigger with more services. Possibly getting a rental car could be less expensive if you do it there. So what were some of the things that your family enjoyed doing while you were in Missoula?
Sure. We chose Missoula because I have a very old college friend who's been used to live in the Chicago area, and trying to get out of this sunbeam. That I've been meaning to visit forever. And so we were visiting a college friend, and I've heard so many wonderful things about Missoula. It's about a 2 hour and 45-minute drive south of the West Glacier entrance. And en route to West Glacier or to Missoula, she recommended that we stop two places. One is the town of Big Fork, which is sort of at the northeast corner of Flathead Lake. And she recommended some places for lunch, and it's a cute little Montana town. She wanted us to see a little bit more Montana. And then I think it was about an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes south of that. I can't remember exactly. We drove to the Bison Range, where you can, it used to be federal lands that's now been given back to two tribes that manage the property. And you can actually drive a 30-minute or a 2-hour loop, and you can see bison in their national habitat, about 300 to 500 bison, and then some other animals as well, like bighorn sheep and mountain goats and stuff. Like, so en route, we sort of went out of our way, went to Big Fork, saw Flathead Lake, saw the Bison Range. Also, a fun fact for all your listeners is that it's a huge cherry producing area. So on your way down, you can just stop at one of the farm stands on the side of the road and get some fresh cherries. So that's what we did. And they didn't last very long.
So you can make a whole day of it. Like, it's just kind of a whole travel day, and you're just exploring Montana, cute little town, seeing the animals, the bison. So it just sounds like a fun day. I mean, so you are driving a bit, but you're breaking it up.
Exactly. So yeah, it's a great way to get to Missoula. And so we, from there, ended up going to Missoula, and we spent 2 full days in Missoula. We, for activities, but we ended up staying in the downtown area. For your listeners who've maybe been to towns like Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Austin, Texas, Missoula is also home to University of Montana. There's around 12,000 students. It has this really great sort of urban suburban feel. Like, you have this really great downtown area, which is on the banks of the Clark Fork River. And I think it's Mount Sentinel, which is in the background. So there's great day hiking out from Missoula. And it's just this really cool town that's in this valley that has great businesses, really great restaurants, a lot of outdoor activities. So for things to do, I got a whole list from my friend who's lived there forever. And the things that we focused on are, walking around town. And then we were lucky to be there in the summer, and Wednesdays, I think it's called the Lunch Out Wednesdays. And in their main downtown park in Missoula, Caras Park, right on the banks of the Clark Fork River, which is just so pretty, they do this huge food truck lunch. And there's all these great food trucks, and you're outdoors, and it's beautiful, and there's live music. So we did that and had wonderful food. I think my husband and I had Vietnamese banh mi's, Vietnamese coffee. My daughter got a hamburger with nacho cheese, and I think
so she was happy.
She was so happy. And she ended I think that was her breakfast, because we finally let her sleep in because she'd been getting up so early. And she got an ice cream sandwich in between 2 donuts. It's called stuffed donut. And then after that, we went to Spotted Dog Cycles, which is a bike rental shop and bike shop on the south banks of the river. And we rented some bikes, and we rode on the trails. We found the trail. We sort of went one direction toward Missoula Fort Regional Park, which was a little bit more industrial. We don't love that trail. And we headed the other way, which took us on a trail right along the river on the south bank of Missoula. And that was a really pretty ride. And it didn't last very long, because by the time you get into, I can't remember I wrote it down. I can't remember the Kim Williams Nature Area. That when you're in the Kim Williams Nature Area, the path gets really rocky, and we just didn't have the right bikes for it. You really needed more of a mountain bike or something sturdier than the rentals we were on. Headed back, met our friend, and we did the number one Missoula activity that everybody tells you to do.
Oh, tell me.
Highly worth it. Is the floating down the Clark Fork River. You put in sort of north and outside of town, and you ride an inner tube or a boat. You float down the river, and you come out, and you just enjoy the scenery, and sort of you go through these canyons. And especially when we did it in the late afternoon light. It's so sunny, and everything's reflecting off the water, and it's just stunning. And it is a relaxing, wonderful experience, and probably the ultimate Missoula experience. Because if you read or talk to anybody, they will tell you to do a float trip down the river. And so that's what we did. We did that one afternoon, and Then there's a ton of hikes also. You can do hikes just from downtown to the mountain right behind it. There's a big M for University of Missoula. One of the hikes is just hiking up to the M. Um, our friend recommended driving about an hour, almost hour and a half south to the Bitterroot National Forest. And we did a day hike to the Blodgett Canyon Overlook, on the Blodgett Canyon Overlook Trail. We brought a picnic and we did that trail. So there's just a ton of hiking, lots of activities, river activities, biking. It's nice. It offers several
Outdoors.
things to do. Yeah, outdoors.
All
And lots of
beautiful.
great restaurants. Oh, wow. All the food
Okay.
we had in Missoula was delicious.
Was there
So,
anything in particular that you think people should try, or just wherever they go, they're going to find something great?
we didn't, we love to cook. So we are somewhat discriminating when it comes to food. So did not have a bad meal in Missoula. For comparison, Glacier is not that, like, you don't go to Glacier for the food. There's not a lot of food options. There's not one place that I would recommend as so amazing for food, except the Highland Brewery outside the North Fork or the West Glacier entrance has probably the best pie I've had anywhere. So that's one thing for
Okay.
Glacier.
Well, that's something.
But for Missoula, we ate at the we ate at the Top Hat restaurant one night, and that just had a mix of different foods. I think we had buffalo cauliflower. Was it that? And the appetizer was something else. But we just had a different mix of foods that one night. Then we had dinner one night at the Cranky Sam Public House, which is just a brewery, and you can get drinks there. But next door is a gourmet pizzeria called Biga Pizza, and BIGA, and you can get your pizza from there and eat it on the patio at the public house. And we did that one night, and the pizza was excellent. And just outside of town, we had dinner one night at the Rattlesnake Market on their patio. And it's just right outside of town. And it's just so stunning and beautiful. You got the mountains and the river sort of nearby. And we had some really great food there as well. So there's almost like this gourmet aspect to, I don't know if they're one-upping on each other on all their food, but we did not have a bad meal, not a bad breakfast, lunch, or anything at any of our meals in Missoula.
Okay. That's good to know, because I kind of would just think it would be not as fancy, just more basic food. So that sounds delicious. Okay, so Missoula sounds like such a great place to add on to your glacier trip. I think, why not? Like cheaper flights, hopefully, right? Hopefully a cheaper rental car, but you also get to see a new city, explore, get a little more of the Montana vibe, which I think would be really fun, and just get to see a new place. So combining those was genius. So smart.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. I think it was a little more affordable to fly out of Missoula. So sometimes, sticking to a budget ends up in some happy accidents.
Yes, definitely. Okay. So before we wrap up, I love to ask 3 final questions. So first of all, what is one of your favorite places that you have ever visited?
Switzerland. I love hiking. 2 years ago, my husband and I did a trip to Switzerland and Austria. Austria was wonderful. It was 2 weeks, and we spent 7 days hiking in the Bernese Oberland, and took my breath away. Every day we lacked the language for how beautiful it was. So we just started calling everything stupid beautiful, because it was just so stupid how beautiful it was. And it was just a pleasure for someone like me who loves to hike and be in the outdoors. The Bernese Oberland was wonderful. I think I leaving on the train outside its town, I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I was very sad to leave. So most beautiful
now I
place.
have to add a new place to my list. That sounds so
absolutely
amazing. Okay, and then do you have one item that you always take with you on every trip?
Yes, the obvious item is my phone, just because of the camera. And there's nothing better than being in a beautiful place and feeling that you are obliged to take a picture. The second less obvious and probably less sexy item is that I never go on a trip without taking cold suppressant tabs. I will myself healthy. Sometimes when that mental willpower doesn't work, which is a little bit of magical thinking, but I try to will myself healthy, is that as soon as, I have that telltale ache in my neck, or that sneeze everybody knows when you sneeze a certain way and the cold's coming, or that tickle in my throat, I will take those cold suppressant tabs and I will push them on every every member of my family. We have a certain one that we found has worked, either because of the placebo effect or the real deal. So I take those religiously with me anywhere we go.
So what kind do you like? Now I need to know.
So I don't know if you've heard of it. It's UMCA. It's UMCKA. And
I
the
have
active
seen
ingredient
those.
is based off of a South African root. And yeah, my husband is a physician, and he looked up the medical trials and the information, and it looks like it's got a real effect, and we've been using it for years. And I will take
Okay.
one. We take the ones that you dissolve, and you can't chew it. You have to let it dissolve, and it's, knock on wood, been working. So
That's awesome.
if
We
that
are
helps
not here.
someone.
Yeah, we aren't here to give medical advice, but if
No.
anyone thinks
Yeah,
that
but a
sounds
huge
great,
disclaimer.
right?
Yes.
But I mean, I have used that brand and I thought it was good too. But yeah, take that as you will, listeners.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all right, then final question is, where are you going next?
So our next big trip, because we have some smaller trips that are a little up in the air right now, but our next big one is the Switzerland trip I mentioned was really my bucket list trip. I'd been wanting to go to Switzerland probably for 20, 25 years. My husband has been wanting to go to the Olympics for his entire lifetime. So our big trip is going to Paris this summer for the Olympics. We have our tickets, we have our lodging booked. We've spent a small fortune, so that's dictating some more minor travel between here and there. We also have a junior in high school, so we're doing some college visits. We'll probably be up in Wisconsin. We have a 13-year-old volleyball player, which probably necessitates some local volleyball tournaments in Milwaukee. I mean, so not everything can be Paris, Switzerland, or Glacier National Park, but we might do spring break in Utah, and I have a girlfriend trip that might happen in Savannah or the Temecula wine area just outside of San Diego, or just a few of the things. And then if I could ever fit it in, and I don't know which of these is happening, I would love to fit in a walking holiday end to end. I love those styles of walking in the UK. So we'll see what happens. But right now, the one that's booked is that Paris Olympics trip.
Oh, that's amazing. And so many other fun small trips. I think the ones close to home can be just as great as the big ones far away.
I've never been to Milwaukee. I want to go. It's so close.
Go check that off your list. So fantastic.
Absolutely.
I love learning from you today, Janice, and just hearing about Glacier and Missoula. Definitely, I want to go. I want to visit. And I'm grateful for all the tips that you've given us, especially with permits and booking things early. Because once you kind of know that, I think it is empowering. And if you realize that it's probably not that hard to figure out, you just have to kind of be a little organized.
Absolutely.
So thank you for coming and sharing everything with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was my absolute pleasure. And thank you for having me as a guest. I appreciate it.